Today on Gamers Couch,
Martians, a story of civilization.
Hello and welcome to the couch. This is Daniel, my sweet hubby. I'm Sarah, the artist behind Pinselgeschichten, and each Sunday we have one of these shows sharing one game of our vast, maybe not so small, board game collection with you. Today we venture to Mars and we go about it pretty much like every week. Rules and gameplay first, talking about likes and dislikes next, having a thumb rating of the game, and finishing off with funny stories and experiences. Now there won't be a teaser necessarily today, and you might now wonder, what she's saying? Here's the thing. We published the game for Draw for Initiative today, and yes, you all have been right. It was Karuba. This is what we published. Link in the iCards. Save it for later to watch and see what Tina and I painted, what the experience with the game was, and what we think about other things, because we chat. Today marks the Sunday before that magic event in Germany happens. It's called Spiel. It is a very important show when it comes to board games. So we will, spend the next weekend with the friends on the floor at the show. Hence, there will not be a Gamers Couch next Sunday because although I have tried, and he has really tried all year long, we haven't figured out how to be in two places at once. So we cannot record a video and do post-production and be at the show. So, yeah. What?
May I say something?
No, you will in a minute. So, there won't be a Gamers Couch. But next Sunday would have been the Sunday where there would have been a new teaser. And now you can say something by answering the following questions. Do you want to tease that painting for Draw for Initiative that would have been teased next Sunday? Do you want to tease it today, or do you want to skip that part altogether?
Yes. You
want to tease it? Or do you... I have an or question.
Yes.
Man! Can you please pretend to be...
Yes.
Yes, I know. But... which one? First or second?
No, we can tease it.
Okay, good. So that's going to happen at the end of the video. Now you can say things. He was not allowed to screw up the intro and housekeeping.
Well, you mentioned that we haven't figured out to be at two places at the same time, which is not entirely correct. We just have made very terrible experiences with that, because that involved time travel. And,
yeah. I had therapy. I totally forgot. It's also called Anachrony. Again, teaser, link in the iCards.
And now I can talk
yes,
normally,
you can.
Because I had to promise not to say anything.
Yeah, no screw up of housekeeping, because I have to dang,
adhere to being a Martian and being a civilized Martian.
On Mars, you drink Earl Grey with a bit of honey.
Hot. Mm-hmm. And with the finger. It's important for hygiene reasons.
So, rules and gameplay. We go the normal route now.
Just go...
Oh, you can say something else if you have housekeeping things first. I thought I had covered them all.
I have housekeeping. Apparently, I'm not married today.
So, what? No, you have to remedy that. I will cut that section out to get the rings.
Be right back.
I love you too. These are the shackles. He has to wear them.
And suddenly married.
Honeymoon was awesome. Now, let's go to the important things now. The board game.
I was about to say, or I wanted to say, and then I forgot to look it up, to say that kind of this season of Gamers Couch, which if you say that Essen is sort of the start and end of a season, I was close to say that we might have started with a game about Mars and now are ending one with a game about Mars. But I don't know. I don't remember if the first
Can I have your phone and can I look?
After Essen was terraforming Mars. We will never find out now, but...
You can look it up on the playlist.
Yes. Yes, so we have another one of those Mars games, and actually we didn't intend to spread it out to have so much time pass since I picked this up last year at Essen, and we just got around to play it, which is an indicator of that there was a lot of games coming out this year and a lot of stuff that had us interested. By that, I'm not saying that I wasn't interested in this game, but it sounded a little bit more involved, and typically when we try to pick a game or are short on time, we take the one that looks less intimidating. Boy, were we wrong on a couple of other games with that. But let's go into this. So, Martians, A Story of Civilization, and I will now try to make this terrible only once for me, by Krzysztof Wolicki and Grzegorz Oklinski. I'm super sorry. Please don't.
That sounded like a barf.
I
can try if you give me the box. I don't wear the glasses. I can't read. It's tiny. Or we can.
It's this big letter. Anyway,
not.
It's a game for 1 to 4 Martians. Takes apparently, so the box says 90 to 120 minutes, and is for Martians the age of 14 and older, or the human equivalent. Now, typically, I would say this is a game of blah in blah, and categorize that really fairly quickly. But this game is a little bit of a shapeshifter, chimera kind of thing, because it is a game that you can play solo, co-op, semi-co-op, or competitively. But at its heart, it's an kind of worker placement action selection game, or action point game combined, which makes it actually quite interesting in the mechanical department. Since we prefer, I would say, cooperative games over competitive games,
especially on date night. The name says it all. Date night. I mean.
Yeah, what I'm going to tell you about is what this game looks like cooperatively or semi-cooperatively. It's rather the same. You are working towards a goal. In this case, you actually have a mission. We picked for this one the underground colony, and I hope you can see it on the top camera now if editing has switched. Has editing switched?
Course.
Editing has switched to course because fine wasn't available anymore. Anyway, so we have
I love him dearly, but sometimes.
So we are playing
He's challenging.
The underground colony, which tasks us to build quarters for us to in order to take shelter for an upcoming solar eruption kind of radiation thing, which would probably die us. Also,
what? Kill us. It's not die.
It makes us dead.
Determinized.
Also. In this game, we are trying desperately to avoid any reference to Matt Damon because we spent all those jokes on other Mars games already.
We did.
Starting with us, each of us is playing a corporation. In this case, I took the blue ones. So it's called LabTech. Sarah
I'm
has
yellow and I'm AMU.
AMU. They have the same boards. There's not a big difference between them. Actually, the German side is a little bit funny because the long arm crane, and that's your free German lesson of the day, is here said. Langer krank, and krank means sick or ill. So it's the long sickness or the long ill. We were when we did
amused.
Look at the English side first. It was like, what is it trying to tell me? And then I saw, it's just a typo. So langer Kranarm is what the manual says, which is as German as it gets for something sounding very intimidating, but actually meaning long arm crane. We both are playing these corporations, and the game is structured in cycles. A cycle is essentially a couple of rounds where you perform actions. You have, in the beginning of the game, 3 rounds, so there's a tracker here. So going through all these here is a cycle. In a cooperative game, you're playing 4 cycles. And you have some administrative work at the end of each cycle to do. And as it goes for rounds, since we're playing 2 players, everybody gets a turn per round. And then it goes to the next round, and sometimes between rounds there's events happening with actually some weather changes that happen on Mars that might affect what we are doing. In our turns, we can use the facilities on Mars. Since this is a kind of, it is sci-fi, but it is pretty, I think, rooted in reality sci-fi. So there's different habitats that allow you to create food by growing crops. You have wind farms and solar farms to create energy. You have an oxygen generator called the Moxie. You have a hospital to generate medicine to cure your people. You have a water refinement plant that will take the dirty, filthy water of Mars and make delicious Zeltas out of it without the sparkles, though. Or you can go and play around, roll in the dirt, like
we dig,
like what we tend to do. So there's some mining, excavation stuff. You can ship some good stuff that you found for research purposes back to Earth or wherever somebody cares about it. We don't care because all that does is send us money, as well as pick up supplies. So that emergency email you sent home saying send more stashes of porn is what you're getting. To pick that.
He's on fire. No, yeah, go
and
for
last,
it.
last but not least,
I'm gonna demonetize.
we can. Well,
That's fine.
We can do science for our own sake rather than for other people's sake. We won't get money, but down here are the laboratories, which allows us to improve our stuff. There's some like colony-wide improvements that we can do that will make every day life, not every day, easier. In this case, this will help you either produce or make medicine more efficiently, or your air supply more efficiently, or this little sperm in a tube is to increase your chances of getting a population. So it's called birth control. And this is where the corporation tiles come into place. You can upgrade your corporation to have additional boons like the long sickness or a weather report, some DNA modifications. I'll get into what they mean once we get to the game. So the base game idea is you
forgot education.
Oh, I'm sorry. Yes.
There's a university on Mars.
A large group or a large part of the population decided that education is just a joke anyway and that we can skip it, so I wasn't talking about that. But yes, there's also an education center where you may be watching those magazines you're getting from Earth to learn something. In this case, however...
Spelling. Probably.
Yes, it's reading it for the jokes.
Mm-hmm.
In this case, you can either hire assistants or, develop assistants, whatever you want to call them, or experts to help you in your endeavors, which give you additional opportunities. And those are, again, things that actually go into your board. And you have slots here for your experts, and you have slots for your assistants that might help you out. So that's the big kind of overview game loopy kind of thing. You run through these cycles, run through each round where everybody has some turns. You have some events happening, some weather happening. And at the end of each cycle, you actually have to check if you died. And with that, it means you have these quarters here. And typically, all your guys require, surprisingly, oxygen to live. So you have to make sure that at the end of the turn, you have something to breathe there. So you want to get rid of these lung markers by providing oxygen through this thing. Also, there's something called a supplemental phase, which happens actually before the next cycle starts, which fills up that thing. In our two-player game, we will fill it up with 2 disease markers because people are getting sick, 4 hunger markers, which, obviously we need to eat something, as well as those dreaded oxygen markers. So what we are actually trying to do is keep ourselves alive by supplying our quarters with these bare minimum kind of required stuff that makes life a little bit easier. as well as trying to complete the scenario that we chose, which in this case says we need to build a couple of quarters underground. I guess it might be interesting to go through the stuff, what you can do. Actually, I forgot one place. We have the building facility here, and that's the thing I haven't mentioned yet, where you actually can build facilities or upgrade them. And you may notice that some facilities, so these are actually the action spaces. We have these Kickstarter plastic minis. So if you are taking the action, you place one of your guys on here. Now you will notice that some of the facilities, like the hospital or the water treatment plant, have this red thing there, which essentially means that facility does not exist yet. You have to build it first to use it. This is where this thing here comes in, where you have to spend energy and some materials to remove one of those tokens and build the facility, making it available for everyone. And that's an interesting thing for co-op as well as semi-co-op or competitive, because you're not only unlocking the thing for yourself, but you're also unlocking it for the others to use. The second thing here is the upgrade. These yellow markers mean that you can still use the facility you want to use, but if you place your action marker on here, you have to spend more time, which I think promptly brings us to the thing that I think that is quite interesting about this this game from a mechanical standpoint. So each corporation, each player has 3 of these astronaut so-called action markers, which you can place to take an action. That is but only one of the resources you are spending by doing so. The other is time. So each action is associated with a time value, and per turn you only have 3 points of time, because, well, that's how things roll. So you can actually place one guy here for one time, one guy there for one time, and then you could not use, let's say, this place here, and use that action that requires 2 points of time, which would bring you up to 4. So you have to decide what you want to do. Do you want to do the single action, maybe that is very time intense, or do you want to use multiple actions that are just using up 1 point of time? Hiring people through the education center, for example, just requires you to place an action marker, but doesn't take time, actually. It requires money, which is one of the resources in the game. And that balancing out is quite interesting. There's also an action you can take, which is not on the board, which is retrieve all of your action markers, or as many as you want, actually, which also requires you to spend 1 point of time. So sometimes you'll just end up placing 1 or 2 guys and using the third time marker just to retrieve those 2 guys. You're also not allowed to have more than 1 guy at a single facility, so you cannot do something like this, using this twice with 2 different action markers. However, you can use multiple actions, so I could build multiple things by spending just more time there with 1 guy, which is another interesting little thing you can do. Speaking of resources, and I promise we'll almost be done then, there's a couple of resources. The most, I think, important one is energy, which is represented by these yellow crystals. Energy is provided or created by building wind farms or solar panels, which you can do here. And then, as you might see here in the rounds between or before round 1 starts and between 2 and 3, there's a phase that generates energy, and it will generate energy depending on how many of these farms you have. Every player can have a maximum of 2, which is kind of represented by these blue discs. So if I go here and build a farm, I would just put my disc on here, and then whenever there's an energy provision phase happening, I will get 2 energy for each disc that is there, which might be influenced either by events or by the weather, which is an interesting thought, that if it's very stormy, maybe the wind farm is providing more energy, but since it is stormy and there's a lot of dust in the air, you don't get as much sun, meaning that your solar panels are providing less energy. So there's some interesting little parts in here. Other resources are food, which can be shipped. You can, at the end of your of a round, you can ship 2 pieces of equipment to your quarters. So food is one of them. Medicine is the others. Oxygen, surprisingly, is not shipped. You just remove the token from the quarter that you have there. But that also means you can overproduce food, or you can overproduce medicine for later turns and keep that away. Then digging in the dirt, you can find regoliths. I still don't really know what they are, but they're kind of, I would assume, pieces of stone that have some interesting other
minerals
stuff in there, represented by these red guys here. And then there's dirty water, which are these blue crystals. Dirty water in itself is usually not as useful, but you can refine it using the water treatment plant to make like clean water out of that. And now you might already start to see how things go together. You create energy using these things here, because almost every action requires you to spend energy on them. Then you go excavating by spending the energy and moving this little guy around here, which allows you to pick up, at least at the beginning, 2 of the things that are displayed here, or up to 2. So if I'm starting here on 3 red, I can either decide to use this to pick up 2 of the reds and then move the machine, or first move the machine and then pick up whatever is there. To accumulate these here, then I can take these to the water treatment plant to refine them into clean water. Then I can go to the hospital and use the clean water and maybe some supplies to generate medicine. Or I can just take energy to the Moxie and create some fresh air to breathe. I can also go down here and spend an action to create food. This is how you get there. And every corporation starts with a base food thing that you can do. So if you go here and use the farming action, you're actually using this space, meaning spend clear water and energy to make a cabbage. That's pretty much how cabbages are made. It's just time, compression, and energy. But you can also upgrade that to later on, where you can either produce more cabbages, or maybe even cabbage and medicine, because they're super healthy cabbages. That's how these come into play. And last but not least, we have, as I said, our stashes of filthy magazines. These in these supply markers, they can be retrieved by using that space. Okay, there's only 3 more things on the board that I did not explain. Actually, 4, 5.
15.
Enough. We have some weather, but at the beginning of the game that doesn't concern us, because we have stable weather, which is the German here, stabile Wetterverhältnisse, which just means nothing is...
It's a bright Martian morning.
Nothing is going on.
No sandstorms, nothing.
Then we have these stacks of cards, which I conveniently put down so that you can see them a little bit easier, but actually they are put face up. These are our experts that are available, and these, if you purchase them, give you an extra thing you can do on your turn by spending the resources here to make something happen. So, for example, this is a... someone who deals with nutritional values of food and why burgers are not better than cabbages. And if you use him, spend 2 money, a cabbage, and an energy, you get to remove 2 food tokens. So essentially, he's he's doubling the effect of that cabbage by spending 2 money and an energy, but without spending a time unit on it. Or this engineer can create air out of money and energy, which is, I think,
everybody can do that.
He's talking a lot or something like hot air. We have a doctor here who's making medicine more efficient, and some of these are, I think, actually from the Kickstarter or our Kickstarter promo thing. So I think this was it Baumeister? It's
Bob the Builder.
Yes, Bob the Builder does allow you to use this build action by spending 4 money without actually being there and using that. On the other hand, we have assistants, and assistants are scientists, botanists, or geologists, and they upgrade your the things you can do. So a scientist reduces all these actions that require you to all the lab actions by 1 time unit, but you still have to spend at least 1. The botanists generate more food whenever you are using the farm action, and the geologist allows you
harvest. That's the word, not farm.
Yes, the harvest part, and the geologist allows you to pick up to 3 of the markers that are shown here when you traverse with your little excavation machine and do some stuff. And the last 2 parts, if you excavate stuff, you can also choose to spend additional time and draw a card for every of these regolith red markers that you have to maybe get nothing, or some weird crystal that'll allow you to work with these purple cards here, or science tokens, where you can send stuff back home and they will pay money for you. So if you actually, unfortunately, there's no one matching the yellow card I just drew, but if we had a green crystal, we could use this shipment action, spend 2 time units to send this home and get 10 credits for that. And these are, as I said, typically all open. The regolith cards are face down, so you never really know what you're getting. Spoilers, it's almost always a blank, at least if I'm drawing.
Don't go for the funny stories yet.
Okay. But that's, I think, a quite long explanation on what's going on this board. And I'm doing that on purpose because it is one of those games where the first step is you open the game, you take the manual, and then you throw it as far away as you can, because there's an updated manual on the internet, which still has some parts where I'm doing the good old head scratch, but it's way better than what's in the box regarding the manual.
Shall we play a turn first before?
Yeah, sure. Yeah. And I think we'll make this quick because these games tend to be very thinky, and it's just to give you a really rough idea how the engine is moving once you're going.
I've got the start poker.
Okay,
so I'm gonna start. I'm
doing the civilized tea trick.
Yeah, I only have 2 credits. You have 3 credits, which means you wanted me to start.
We are, as I said, playing
cooperative.
So everything we have is shared in regards to resources. The only thing that's not shared is our discs on these parts. So meaning Sarah can build 2 here, and I can also build 2 there, and we both would generate energy, even though that goes into the same pool. But it's more about the restriction that you're not allowed to have more than 2 of these in any combination build.
Yeah. So the first thing I want to do is take 1 energy crystal from this space here.
I haven't.
No, I thought you did that on purpose for when we start the game. At least that's how I. Anyway,
that's fine.
So I'm taking 1 of those crystals. We have 4 in the beginning, and I don't have to spend an action for that, but I'm going to lose 1 point of reputation. I pretty much don't care. I take the energy.
Yeah, which is something I haven't told you yet, but there's this scoring track here about reputation. Now, you can either use that to gauge how successful your co-op or solo mission is, but effectively in co-op and solo, this does not serve any purpose. This is entirely there just for semi-co-op and for competitive play, where you want to end up as the player with the highest reputation. Essentially, in semi-co-op and competitive, it's a race between those corporations trying to get the administrative rights for the entire colony. Where in semi-co-op, you still have to keep everybody else alive, though, because kind of they don't want to have dicks in space, but at least half should be, because otherwise the birth thing won't work. But don't be a kind of annoying person in space. Don't kill your co-workers. In competitive, however, it's like, this is my quarters, I have oxygen, and you don't have any oxygen.
It's like, oh, yeah. But you could use that track in co-op as kind of like, oh, this is how awesome we are, like we used the sparks in Dark Souls. Oh, sorry, I wasn't in the thought. I only semi-listened. But now,
that's what I said.
I'm sorry, babe. Now, as my first action, I want to go here to the Dig. I want to be one of the dwarves in Snow White. I have to pay 1 yellow energy.
And now Sarah gets to decide. Do you want to
turn the key?
Do you want to excavate 2 of these red crystals and then move, or do you want to move first and then excavate either 2 red crystals here or 1 red? And 1 blue?
I want to go here first, and not here. Yeah, I want to go to the red.
Okay, and whenever this moves, then all adjacent markers will be revealed.
Because we can see shit from there.
But Sarah, since she's moving here now, is farming 2 of the red markers.
I get us 2 red chickadee bees.
Now, she could, if she wanted to, spend another time unit to examine those, to retrieve 2 of those cards. And yes, I'm aware I didn't shuffle the blank card back into the stack. It's all on purpose.
It's on purpose. But I don't want to do that. I actually want to build a house for us. It's off camera, you can't see, but we have we start with 10 energy and 2 supply markers and a bit of money. So we do have the gray marker as well, and I want to go here.
So 1 red, 1 supply, and 1 energy.
And which building do we want to go first? Do you want to go for water or for medicine first?
I'd almost say let's go for energy first. And,
so let's go for energy.
Have one of those.
I'm very good with wind things, so I'm going to go here.
So I'll use that. When I said Sarah can actually perform another action as similar to the excavation, the kind of analyze whatever she excavated. Here she can also perform multiple actions, but she cannot perform the same action twice. So with that meaning she can build one of those, and she could actually build some other building if she wanted to.
Do you want me to? Or do you want to have the red and the gray for something specific that you are planning?
I think we're fine with that.
Okay.
Why not go and we need
a red, a yellow, and gray.
I mean, we need clear water for the hospital,
for the farming as well. So I'm building that with the first action here. I get 3 reputation because I'm awesome like that.
Yes.
And I take the marker away that says, now there's a building.
So a little side for the semi-co-op competitive building stuff or helping people out is typically something that is rewarded with reputation points. You may see down here that if you deliver food or if you deliver medicine, that actually also gives you reputation points. Why is it important? Well, because you can also ship it to quarters that are not your own, which is fairly interesting also in semi-co-op. Where you can make deals with other people, or you can say something with, hey, why don't you focus on our food needs? I'll take care of energy needs and we can trade. Or something like that. Yeah. Or you can even offer victory points, reputation points for that in exchange.
Well, I still have a third dude, but I don't have any time anymore. And the building for the one thing that you just need credits for, no time, is not built yet. So I'm going to finish my turn. And that means my colonist marker goes up here. And that means I'm done. And I'm handing it off to this handsome Martian next to me.
And I have not told you yet, but each of us has 3 of these markers, meaning we get 1 turn per round. Unsurprisingly, there's a 4th one hidden under here, which you can also get if you manage to get 3 birth markers on here, which will unlock these and require you to spend more food per turn, but gives you an entirely new round, which just has more actions for you to do that. So I'll try to be very, very quick about this. I think I'll also first go and do some excavation by moving the guy here. Now, you might say, well, it might be a good idea to move over here and get the red and the blue. Unfortunately, the rules say you always have to move closer to an undiscovered tile. And even if you maintain distance, you have to go closer if possible. So I think it might be a good idea to go with the red first, simply because we still need to build some stuff before we can successfully start harvesting water. But we will find out soon. So,
it was a 3, right?
I get 2.
Oh,
so whatever happens, unless you have the geologist, you only get 2 of the things that are on here, but you get to choose which ones. But if you have the geologist, you can get up to 3. So now we have those. Did I pay the energy?
Nope.
Then
did you take the energy?
No, but we can
take the energy, because when there's a storm, a sunstorm erupting, this might go away.
Yeah, so this is
empty that.
But I still need to spend energy.
Totally.
I thought you were
no.
Over now.
Anyway, no. I'm not going to pay your stuff.
That was my first idea. I also don't want to spend time analyzing that just yet.
Oh, you mean the rocks?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay.
I'll go down here and spend 1. Do I want to spend 1? I think I want to spend 2 time units to get 2 supply markers, just to have our stock upped again, so that we get to do some other stuff. Meaning I spend 1 time unit there and 2 time units there, and even though I have, similar to Sarah, 1 action guy left, that was my turn. Now, at the end of this, the start player marker goes over, in this case to me, meaning I will now start. And since I still have one guy left here, I can do something. I think since here's a thought. I could go to the water treatment plant, and no, I couldn't, because I don't have water yet. But
no dirty water.
Even then, that might not be the best idea, because then if Sarah wants to go there, she has to spend an additional time unit if she wants to use one of those yellow spaces. On the other hand, Sarah cannot use this space here because she has already an action marker over there. She has to retrieve them first. So what
you want to take the energy?
So I want to take the energy first, then I'm moving over here. And I think I also want to build something. Since energy is actually really important in this game, I think I'm going to spend...
I already have payment in hand. I'm going to pay for you today.
And I'm going to set up a solar panel, just to make sure that whatever weather conditions are coming up, we will have some energy going towards us. Now, I have all my action markers on the board, and the next thing I could do is just spend 1 time unit to retrieve as many as I want, and I'm getting all 3 of them. Why? I already moved 1 down.
Oh, you did? Oh, sorry. Didn't see that. Sorry.
You... Did I? Oh, no. No, I took 2. That's... You are right.
I know. I'm so smart.
I am sorry. So, I still have one time unit left, and I think I'll go do the excavation part once more and move this guy over here, and to get to dirty water, which also reveals more tiles down here.
One energy.
Yes, we spend one energy. I'm getting 2 dirty water from here. And now, since my turn is over, Sarah has the opportunity to create water and maybe even medicine at some point.
I would go for air and water.
Yes,
But first I take the last energy token.
Yes, and then you can actually show that you can place one guy, retrieve them, and then place them again to remove both of the oxygen parts.
I can short arms.
So time unit 1, spend
this one
to get rid of one of these oxygen markers.
Time unit 2. All of them come home. Time unit 3. Spending energy. And I can't reach the second marker. Thank you.
Actually,
and then my hoopla hoop goes here.
I think we were supposed to place one of these markers on here as well, but we have not built any quarters there.
Nope.
We're still say digging. Something about that scenario once we get through here, because as I said, there's still some things sometimes that you're left with. Well, try to interpret what the game tries to tell you. But now we are getting here, and we will get our first event card. Now there's for each of the 4 cycles there are 2 event cards, even though you just reveal one in the first game. And I will reveal that one, and this says, oh no, steering has failed us. So there's a fluff text on these cards and some actual things that are happening. So this tells us that our mining equipment is malfunctioning and that it can only move to the left from now on. To remind us of that, I'm placing this little marker here, so saying that we have an event that affects that thing for, as long as it takes... either this says to the end of the cycle or yes, until the end of the entire cycle, this thing will only move to the end. And
Good thing it's only one round.
Yes, and then it'll reset. But we also get new weather. So I'm removing this weather card, and the next thing is a sandstorm, which means that in this case, if we want to perform the harvest action, we have to spend an additional energy. And unfortunately for us, both of these produce one less energy, which brings us now to the third thing, energy production. Both of us gain 1 energy for having a disc there, which is still better than no energy at all. And you might guess there's cards that favor one over the other. It's, especially in a co-op game, probably pretty good to just be ready for everything and make sure that you are prepared. Now, since Sarah
I got the
gets
pokey.
the turn, and she starts again.
I'm not pleased with things.
Do you want to build a hospital? And
yes.
And I'm Alpha Gaming again. I'm sorry.
No, the other one would be then the water, right? Mm-hmm. So I'm gonna go here. And
we don't need medicine right now, but we will need medicine starting the next cycle. And
and you can never be too prepared for anything. I'm gonna get 3 niceness, and I'm gonna build the hospital. And then I'm gonna have the dude go here.
Spending 1 energy and 1
blooby boop
water to get us to
2 clean water.
Clean water.
That was number 1, number 2, number 3. I'm gonna go home.
Retrieving all of them?
Yeah.
Okay.
I'm gonna make space for you. And hold it. The marker has to go there.
I'm doing boring stuff.
You're never boring.
I again will spend 2 here to get us back on the supply marker track, and then I'll just go over here to produce some medicine as the third action. So I'm spending clean water, energy, and a magazine maybe.
That's where you read how to
generate one of these
of the medicines.
So at least we have those covered, which then ends my turn, and that ends the cycle. Now, at the end of the cycle, there's a couple of things housekeeping-wise that you're doing. First, you would now check if there are any markers left in those quarters, and they are not. If there would be markers, it depends on what markers are there. If you have oxygen markers here, you have to flip over one of these for each player. So if we leave one oxygen marker in one of the quarters, that would mean that two of us of our guys would die, meaning, yes, we get an entire turn less in the next upcoming cycles, which is very punishing. So oxygen should be your priority. Next up, if there's a disease marker here, or for every disease, for every quarter that has a disease marker is actually the correct phrasing, each player has to put in one of their action guys. So that would mean, since I'm now on the board, I have to take them from the board. They are trapped here, and
they have to stay home to get better.
Retrieve them at any point, you have to spend one time unit per marker that you want to get back. Now, this is a little bit different for all the different modes. In co-op, competitive, co-op, semi-co-op, and solo, each player has to place one action marker there for the thing. If you're playing competitive, you are only concerned with your own quarters. So if you don't have, or if you have a sick guy in your quarters, only you have to place an action marker there, not all the other players. Food markers work in a similar fashion. If there's still at least one or more marker in there, again, you would place your action markers here. So per quarter, if you're really unfortunate and have not taken care of both things, you will lose two of your action markers to this. The difference is, to retrieve them, you're not spending a time unit, but you're spending 2 credits per thing. So food is the least punishing out of the 3. Oxygen, terrible. Medicine or disease, still not good, but at least not as crushingly terrible, because you can recover from that by spending a time unit. And food being the least offensive. However, you'll see in the add more stuff there phase that's coming next, that food is a little bit harder to get rid of, just because it's a lot more that you have to provide. So that's kind of what happens there. But fortunately, we had our quarters clean, meaning that at the start of the next cycle, the first thing we do is the so-called supplement phase, and we check, are our quarters clean of every token? If yes, we are rewarded with having a birth marker. Because it is so hospitable, and the magazines kept flowing, that everybody really likes to do one thing, and that is building rooms for little children.
I thought you'd say building humans. That would be true.
Yes, they're engineering humans in a very scientific way.
Building.
Yeah, I
It's
know.
very scientific, that's true.
Yes, it is. So, again, typically, if you're playing competitively, you only care about your quarters, and everybody gets one of those markers if they have a clean quarter. In a cooperative game or a solo game. Technically, solo, cooperative, and semi-cooperative are all the same, different types of games, with the only difference that solo, you don't have someone else telling you what to do. Co-op, you have other people telling you to do. And semi-co-op, the same, but the one with the most points wins. That's kind of the big difference that's going on there. Also, with semi-co-op, you don't have a shared pool of resources, but are allowed to trade if you want so. So the difference there is, in our co-op game, we only get one guy here, even though we have all our quarters are clean. Because if we get the third, we both get our fourth turn.
Mommy and
marker,
Poppy get a fourth marker.
Yes.
That's how it goes.
So, and then starting with the supplement phase, we get to add more tokens here again, and that's another thing that's not quite clear, it's made clear in the manual, but then there's like online discussions saying something else. I'm going with the thing that makes most sense to me. So since we're playing with 2 players, we only use these 2 quarters, meaning we have to put oxygen because we have to sustain us for the next thing. We also have this time have to get rid of some disease potential that we have here by supplying medicine. And
we're kind of hungry.
Each quarter gets 2 food. Now, let me tell you what the most recent rulebook is saying. It actually says, well, you start placing in quarter 1 and then go down. So you would end up in a setting like this. What's the difference with that versus the other? Well, each of the quarters is dealt with separately at the end, meaning if you are not taking care of these 2, you would have, or every player would have to spend an action marker per quarter, meaning even if you get rid of the oxygen and the medicine markers, both of you would have no action markers at all in this setup because you would theoretically have to place 2 here, 2 here, and 2 here, and then you run out of action markers. However, in this setup, if you ignore one of those, or if you ignore both of those, you would just lose 2 action markers because it doesn't matter how many hunger tokens are in there. It's just about, is there a hunger token in there? Now, why am I so confident with saying it? Well, if you're playing solo, you are actually playing with 2 corporations, or you are playing solo, but you are playing as if you were playing a 2-player game with
you just
2 corporations.
Decide for both people.
With a total of 6 action markers, so again 3 of each color. And the manual explicitly says there, well, if you're playing solo, you're just using quarters 1 and 2 because you're just playing with 2 corporations. And then goes on saying, well, if you're playing co-op in a 2-player game, you are still using all 4 quarters, and actually the same happens for 3. So I'm not sure if that is a kind of a mistake from their initial thing, but I guess it makes sense to say each corporation still has 1 quarters, even if you are playing co-op, and not make your life more terrible than it is. But if you like a challenge, I'd say go with the official thing there and use all the 4 quarters trying to do that. I mean, it's slightly more different. You could say it's not more different. It's not more challenging because it's still the same amount of food that you have to ship to the quarters to get rid of that. However, not dealing with that is way more punishing if you have 4 quarters rather than just 2. But I mean, that's us. We occasionally actually like to win one of these games.
What?
And that's why we go with that thing.
I thought this was like...
This is actually a good point as any to talk about some of the improvements we can do here, because I just glossed over them. But if we would build this lab down here and get one of these advancements, that actually softens a little bit that supplement phase, because we can discover these 3 breakthroughs once, and then either get 1 less medicine token, 1 less breathe token, or 1 more birth token, which is pretty dope if you can get this early on, because that happens regardless of what your quarters look like. You could be the biggest Mars Messi that can be. This guarantees you at the beginning of a cycle at least 1 birth token, which, if you are counting with me, makes it kind of automatic that you'll get the 4th guy at least in the last cycle of the game. If you tidy up in between, maybe you have some spare time for the and you can then go for you know what I mean.
For the construction.
And then everything starts again. But since we're now in the second cycle, the event card we take will be the one from the second stack, and these have been set up with this thing. Something I have neglected a little bit so far, or in our show, was that scenario card. So essentially, what this is asking us to do is to build quarters here, which can be built by using this action. It also says that there's oxygen required for this. If you're playing 1 to 2 players, 1 oxygen, 3 to 4, it's 2 oxygen. And then there's this resupply thing that you can do by using this shipment action, which is usually required for competitive play, where you also have these cards that require you to ship specific goods back home, and they will reward you with points. So in a competitive scenario, you're playing with these, which is, I think, if you're familiar with games like Viticulture, they're kind of similar with the fulfillment contracts, as they're called here, to do that.
Very much so.
So you're not using one of these scenario cards there, but every player is using one of the small cards there. So the resupply action here actually makes no sense at all if you're playing cooperatively or solo, because these only give you, well, points. I mean, they make sense, but they make
semi-co-op.
Yeah, they make sense. As much sense as playing Space Alert and spending your action looking out of the window for some extra points, which I think is appreciated. But in here, it's you will have probably enough stuff on your hands trying to keep your people alive while trying to do the scenario thing and then do that. But there's. And this is almost going slightly into
likes and dislikes.
But there's the game is in. While if you look at the manual, it is not that difficult of stuff that you can do, and I think I went over all of that, and I guess I did an explanation, at least an explanation, not the explanation, but the thing here is, so this says quarters required to be built, and it says 1 to 2 players, you just need 1 quarter, but it doesn't say if each player has to build 1 or 3 to 4. We just assume that this just means, well, all of them together, since you share this thing, which is the least offending thing. But then it's like, okay, there's oxygen required in the quarters. Now, the question for me would be, well, if you're building quarters here, is this oxygen counted the same way as these quarters? And it really doesn't tell you. I think that's might be how it is, or I could be thinking maybe the game is too simple or too easy, and I'm making it way harder by having this being an additional quarter that you have to deal with. Obviously not with food, but at least with oxygen here. Also, kind of confusing at first is this resupply thing. If you look at the sheet, the resupply action is not important at all for co-op or solo. It is just there pretty much for semi-co-op to gather points. And since these guys went out of the way to have additional conditions here for solo and co-op, saying, hey, you need to have researched this DNA modification technology to win. And by the way, victory conditions for any kind of co-op game also requires you to have no markers on here at all. And I think this is where this oxygen also comes in, because it doesn't actually explicitly say that you have to get rid of the oxygen requirement here to win. It just says you have to build the quarters, but then the overall rules say, well, and also no markers in the quarters, which again leads me to believe that if you have built this and there's an oxygen thing on here, you might lose someone. If you don't, that's kind of the
We're going to switch to the front camera now, and let's. We're going to switch in a second.
What I just wanted to say, they actually did a good job of adding the symbols here for saying, hey, this is required for solo and for co-op play. They could have gone so far and say, hey, the things that are here just for accruing points for semi-co-op play, that's what this is for. This is just you can also start shipping energy to gain more reputation to do that, but actually ignore this for co-op or solo missions unless maybe you want to get a higher score or something like that. But as I said, this entire reputation track is not kind of made up for a solo or co-op game. It's just for semi-co-op and for competitive play.
Now we are at the front camera, and you have to bear with the faces. So, one thing that Daniel already very subtly hinted at, which I find goes through the whole manual, is though there are very heavily separated sections for either solo, co-op, blah, 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 all these kinds of games, and also having nice tokens, and it's very well sorted, and the manual reads easily. The problem with the manual is that it sometimes is vague, or sometimes you come up with a question and you can't find an answer at all, like with the oxygen here. So it kind of leaves you either to just house rule, interpret, or maybe ouch.
Maybe ouch.
I'm gonna ouch you back in a hot second. Or maybe just, ignore certain vaguenesses and just fill in the blanks with what you think is logic or reasonable in a certain thing. You just fill in the gaps on your own. When it comes to the mechanics and the way the game plays, it is really cool. I like this whole board here of you can, do the action selection. You have your workers, you build something. You have to take care of the quarter, so you can't be too fast and too greedy with building facilities and sciencing shit together. You have to take care of the breathing and the food and all of that, but you cannot only focus on that, otherwise you, won't do anything else, and you will fail in your mission too. I really like that, and I like how it is handled on the board. The thing that makes it so difficult to get into the game play is the manual, and it was a big hump to get over to actually read, reread, fill in the blanks, read between the lines, that we could play. I heard other people complain about the words being maybe not as clear. I didn't have trouble with that, though I have to say first, I read the German manual, and I didn't have any trouble there. It might be different in other languages, but there were just sections missing, meaning they did explain it to a point and then just stopped, but I had 5 more questions, and then we had to pretty much house rule there or fill in the blanks or just ignore.
And we, in retrospect, we got our first game fairly wrong because there's, I think...
We played it with the original manual, though we didn't read on the new manual that is up on the web.
And I don't want to complain too much about the menu because they came out with a new version of the menu, which again does a terrific job in most cases. And apart from these specialty questions regarding to, let's say, how these scenarios are dealt, or that example with how the tokens are distributed, even though the tokens thing is explicitly said in the manual, but I think it might be just wrong because there's actually there's plenty of discussions on the BGG boards where it says it's actually exactly how it said it's going to be, because only 2 quarters per or 1 quarter per corporation. But it's still, it's something that really, at least for me, pulls out the air out of the game if you have to go hunt for explanations for that.
It is frustrating then that you maybe just put the game away and don't touch it again unless you have...
To record a video about it?
No, I mean, unless you have no other things to do, are super bored and want to have a challenge, you bring out the game. I mean, if you are not... if you are a gamer that is not on the forums all the time and being really pushing and pushing and pushing to definitely get at least one play of a game done to have an opinion about it, if you're maybe at the point that you say, hey, I spent 3 hours here, goodbye, it is very frustrating to have to reread again and again and again, even with the new manual. But I have to say, it's actually worth it to invest that time. Go, no matter if you get your hands on the game, no matter what print you have, go to the web and take that manual just to make sure you're not frustrated. And be comfortable with house ruling a few things, or just assuming a few things where you are maybe having questions. It's like, do I understand that right? Yes, you do. Play. And when you play, it actually is really nice to play. It feels so cool. We have with the co-op mode, we had the challenges that you always have with co-op games. They really want to kick you in the butt. This game does as well. Their experiences are going to come up, but I really like that. The way that you build your engine, and you talk about, we need that, and maybe we go here and do some digging here. Do you want to go to the right? Like that. It really it feels comfortable to play this game, and it doesn't feel humpy and bumpy at all.
For me, there's a couple of qualities about this that I like in general, and that is a cooperative scenario-based game with a good engine behind it, and as almost as if that has to do with a different game that also has a troubled manual that does pretty much what this game does for me in those aspects, would be Robinson Crusoe. It's a very solid base game that is then used to have you play through different scenarios, and this is also how I really like this game, being a very solid kind of a game with an interesting scenario that requires you to rethink what you're doing there. Also, I like about this that this is a space game that is more rooted in kind of almost reality, or closer to reality. Something I also like about Terraforming Mars. But I do, in fact, like this. You are building a base, and
the civilization.
You are working together with the other.
You just don't work on the planet, but you try to establish a human colony or whatever on Mars.
We haven't had a chance to take a look at First Martians, which is essentially also meant to be similar to, obviously, Robinson Crusoe, because it's also by Ignacy Trzewiczek. I hope I said that right.
You did. Bravo.
Then again, I heard not so great things, but I can't actually say something about that because I haven't played it. But this is kind of what I was thinking about hearing about First Martians, being a game about happening on Mars. You are with your friends. You're trying to survive every cycle, so to speak, while trying to do something, but in this case, not obviously fighting King Kong, but trying to build an underground facility, or finding life, or something like that. With that said, something I realized only after we picked this up, because I picked this up in Essen, and it turned out to be one of the Kickstarter copies that came with some extras. As far as I understand, the base version of the game only has 4 of these scenarios in it, and this game comes with at least...
There's more.
Yeah, hang on. This has 8 scenarios, so I think it's 4 more. That was the Kickstarter part. And also these 5 scenarios here that also come with their own specific event cards. I think one of them has a little extra board that you need to put stuff on it. And this is kind of, after saying what I like about this game, this is the meat of how this game gets played more often. The more of these scenarios are there, the more diverse, the more interesting, the higher the chances I want to have this back on the board to do that. On
the table.
Yes, on the table.
That's the big board.
To play with it. And as I said, I think maybe they did themselves a disservice by going directly after let's make a game that's a solo, a co-op, a semi-co-op, and a competitive game. Maybe that this would have benefited a little bit by being more focused on one of the modes. Let's say a co-op or a semi-co-op might be the two definitive things that you want to play there. And then just have maybe an official variant released afterwards. I mean, it's a little bit hard to criticize someone for giving you more options to play with, because I think it's totally worth having all of those modes out there. But I think it would have been a better service to the game to be a little bit more streamlined in your explanation and just focus on one thing there, and then say afterwards, hey, by the way, you can also play this solo. If you're playing solo, it's the same as co-op, just use two corporations and you're done, which is probably the easiest way to explain that. Or you could also play this entirely competitive and then introduce saying, hey, everybody gets 1 quarter, and also you have these contract cards in there. Even though I think you might even have the contract cards in there in semi-co-op and just have them as a possibility if someone wants to hunt for points. For
like extra points or something.
Even though, but maybe that would dilute the let's keep our colony alive aspect of that a little bit too much. But I really like that this is all there. It just feels upon first impression a little bit like that. Maybe a little bit of editing would have been better in this. But that's just my gut feeling, kind of going into this.
Yeah. Well, I can see where you're coming from, and I was actually thinking while you were talking, with a couple of games, I can kind of see what the core idea was upon the game was developed. And you saying it feels to you that the focus was with all these 4 ways to play the game. I'm not sure that this was the core of, let's do this. Maybe it feels definitely to be a co-op game first, or at least semi-co-op, and then having the other things build on top for me. But I'm not sure. I don't know if they wanted to make a worker placement with engine building first, and that was the idea, and this came out of it, and just inspiration sparked, and they went for the different modes, or if it was the other way around. I
think so. I mean, it's difficult. You cannot.
We weren't in the room, as they say.
But I think that the engine part of this game is so strong, and that is actually something why I would recommend this game, because it is a really cool. Worker placements action style game that is playing on Mars, and out of the billion Mars games that came out last year, I think this is one good enough to say, hey, if you are not into the card stuff, or if terraforming Mars is a little bit too bland for you, if you want to have something that is more, I want to go to the oxygen generator and do something instead of I will plant seeds, and in 50 years we might have a plant that is providing oxygen, which is kind of the scale of the games is different, obviously. But I'm saying that jokingly.
Do you remember when we recorded the podcast for Draw for Initiative, when we were sitting upstairs in the studio and you asked Tina and I what we wanted for a game? Remember what I said there?
I think you said Robinson Crusoe in space, something.
No, I said one versus team, but in a co-op mode on Mars, like helping Mark Watney to do this. And this comes closest to the idea of all the Mars games that I have seen. And I think this is why I might have a softer heart and be a bit more forgiving on things where I'm usually really critical and
theme
hard.
Is a big part, and if
definitely, and it feels this is Mars. The theme doesn't feel plastered on at all. Yep. So, because I was wondering, why am I so soft on this in my head? I mean, I was frustrated. Don't get me wrong, but
I didn't have noticed when. But
I didn't say it goes into that one box where the game goes to go to retirement and
the box where games go to die.
No, they don't die. They just live in a dark space, meaning a box, or we might at one point give them away. I don't know. We haven't decided yet, but we have a section in the shelf where those games go, and I didn't say we're going to put that there. So I'm being very soft on certain things that usually really tick me. So it's probably the theme, and that it is closest to what I hope to at one point see somewhere made in the publishing industry. Please, publishers, make something. Please, designers, make something like that. Please.
I think if maybe I'm making a very unpopular comment here, but I think this game suffers a little bit from being on Kickstarter. Because it feels overproduced in certain areas. Like there's the minis there, which they are cool, but they're. I think that if you're coming away from this game, you're not going to say, "Hey, the minis are cool." It's like I had a hard time getting into the rules and spending a little bit more on that. But I understand that if you have your game on Kickstarter, then the quality of the rules or the editing of the game itself
is very important.
Is not as big there, and that is, well, at least from my understanding, that is where typically a publisher would come in and say, "Hey, that's a cool game, but can you trim the fat a little bit here and there?" But then again, I look at this and see, hey, this has some rough edges, but I still very much like it, and it's good enough that I'm kind of excited to see what the guys who did this are going to make next, and if they can improve upon that while keeping some interesting stuff. As I said, well, something I really like about this is this: you have your action markers, but you also have time units, and you have to decide how you want to spend that and how you want to do that. Which makes for an interesting thought process in this entire thing. And I can, as I said, I can almost correlate identical pieces on here to what Robinson Crusoe is doing. These
are dice. These are not cards. These are dice. Actually,
you have weather effects in Robinson Crusoe. You have your upgrades, which are essentially.
And I mean, like the likelihood of something coming up. That's why I'm saying these are dice,
as well as the boards here. Then you have upgrades that you can do to your home base, so to speak. You have to deal with hunger and disease in this case. Otherwise, it would be cold and weather and wild animals. Obviously, not that many wild animals on Mars.
Who knows?
But yeah, you have these things. The part where this is a little bit light is, I think, the events. That is something that I really appreciate about a game like Robinson Crusoe, that you have this highly dynamic event system in there that brings up something terrible and but sometimes something good.
It's always terrible here. Here
you also have events, but they tend to be not good. The variety is just less in that, which is, I guess, fine. I mean,
because in combo you have the missions and the orders and such. So
if I want to see something, if there would be an expansion or something be expanded upon in this game, I think I would like to see something like a more diverse event, maybe some weather cards thing, and more of the missions. But I think I think they released the boards for you to play if you want to look there. I mean, it's not that difficult. Right? You just go and find a picture of these scenario cards, and then you use them. You don't really need to have them in paper form. But since these are the lifeblood of a game like this, I think there's maybe some more interesting things one could do with that, with custom scenarios and adding on to that, and maybe an additional facility or something like that. But I wouldn't actually. I think the game has enough types of things that you can do to be interesting without being too much.
I think you have to juggle enough here, because you need to do all of it all at once, and you kind of can't.
Then again, I think if they would have edited this down, and trimmed it even further, saying this is a pure co-op game, maybe even took out the part where there's assistance and stuff, and just reduced the overall things that you can do. I could have seen this being in the running for a Kennerspiel des Jahres, just because of the theme. This is something co-op. You can play with your family. It has this co-op aspect and is thinky enough, but approachable. But it's, as I said, I would attribute this to it being a Kickstarter, and then let's add something on here and something on there and something on there, and maybe. Yes, it's cool, but it could have
maybe
also
got diluted a bit.
Been good to just leave it.
Yeah.
Anyway, we are still in the likes and dislikes segment.
Yeah,
so
but we have thoughts. We have so many opinions. 1, 2, 3.
Yeah,
tilted 1. Yeah, and there's the softness. If I think it's the theme carries so heavy for me because I was actually thinking about going like this, but I have pain. I can't. So, but I couldn't point to what it was for me. So thanks for clarifying that.
And I think I'm not holding the rules against them here as the point where it goes on. It's the part where I think they could have trimmed a little bit out of this and reduced this of things you can do.
For me, it's the rules. So let's hop into the last section, funny stories and experiences. And remember when I said in the last section that those card decks are actually dice in disguise? Well, they are. I mean, I did definitely assume that the weather deck would be just like the dice in Robinson Crusoe, and we would be screwed left and right, and it would either be a snow cloud or sandstorm or whatever, but I didn't expect any good coming from it, so I was good there. But this little deck here, in our very personal experience, comes up like this. And this is wonderful that it's just there all the time.
I think I drew 3 blanks.
Out of 4 cards. I just drew once because the first draw that I did were, wait for it,
2 blanks.
2 blanks.
Yeah.
And then I said, okay, so maybe I shouldn't spend my time on that because it's the only thing to do here. We have enough money. I don't need the money. I need the food, things like that. So I didn't focus on it. But in one game, it's like two times in a row. Drawing first time, 2 blanks. And he's like, yeah. It's, well, possibilities, likelihood, blah, blah, blah. Math. Went there again. Drew again. It's like, okay, why is there another blank? This is not correct. Why is there another blank? It's like, and then we said, okay, we definitely don't need money on Mars because we all know that in the time that we can colonize or build a civilization on another planet, or we have Star Trek, we don't need money. We have evolved as humans in society. So we kind of disregarded the purple ones after that.
But those Star Trek ones have like things that create like food out of energy.
Yeah, that's where we're going forward to. Yeah, we do the same thing. We don't need money for that.
Not here yet.
We don't need money for farming. We just need sun, water, and seeds.
That's what these cabbages are. Those are just $100 bills
rolled together really nicely in an origami. Right. Yeah, right. So we kind of. I want that. We kind of didn't focus on the purple tiles so much after that, and then we said, oh, these could have been definitely dice, and it felt like having Wheaton's disease with no dice, and it felt so strange once we played this. Like, of course we didn't win, spoiler alert.
Yeah,
but we were sitting there afterwards like, why did we lose? You know, like recapping, saying, okay, could we have done something different? And we both said, yeah, no, this screwed us over and that screwed us over. Yes. And then the event screwed us over. So we had just it was...
we lost people to a disease.
Yeah.
And then we drew an event card that says, and by the way, that third guy that wasn't sick, he's sick now. It's like, okay, we have to spend a full round, both of us, just to get our guys out of the infirmary.
What are the odds? So the odds were definitely stacked against us, and it was just shuffling cards, so no way we could have prevented that. But it felt like, oh, I'm definitely rolling the dice. And, the funny thing is that the game that we played afterwards, I rolled the dice so shitty. So I think I just grabbed it from these cards and it stayed on my hands. It's like,
Although something, and that is also like late likes and dislikes part.
What?
Something that's always a good sign is, even though we lost the game,
thought about it
immediately afterwards. I was like, "Hey, okay, so if I change this or that," and that's typically a really good sign for a game to keep my attention and not just flip the table as usual, as we do also with these recordings. That's how the camera goes back into the box. Just flip everything and no. Okay.
He's so creative, don't you think? He should be a writer.
No,
sometimes.
No, I'm averse to horses and donkeys. So
not ride with a W and a T, and the W is silent.
So it's the same. It's the same word, just with a T instead.
No,
of a D.
I said a T instead of a D.
Yes, it's a writer.
Mm-hmm. The type
writer, which is the German lesson of the day. The typewriter. Anyway, Reiter is a rider in German. And writer is a Schreiber, Schreiberling, Autor.
Schriftsteller. Because you place the letters. Yeah, anyways, enough of the funny stories. It's time to give a teaser because he decided he wants a teaser. So, not next Wednesday. But the Wednesday after, which is, hold on, I think the 1st of November? It should be 1st of November. No. Yeah, 1st of November. The 1st of November, there's going to be a new video on Draw for Initiative, where Tina and I do paint experiences that we have with board games at the table. And the game this time round is all about...
Mars.
No. For one, it is a competitive game.
Mars.
We bought it last year at Spiel.
Mars. Snickers.
Snickerdoodle? No. We bought it last year at Spiel. No, I cannot say that because that would be a spoiler too early. It is all about optimizing things, entertaining people, and using your resources well to get ahead and get the applause and the recognition in amounts of people that watch you.
Oh.
Or like you. It's kind of YouTube,
Yeah, I was about to say that's not much of a hint.
YouTube the board game.
I might have to go back to the internet and then see a show about successfully entertaining people by placing cards and making very bad puns.
Mm-hmm. Perfect, he got it.
It's actually the bad puns are the most important piece. It's
aside from winning, yes, they are.
Something like watching old people argue at 8 p.m.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
Yes. So, what do you think? You have 2 weeks to find it out. Leave a comment in the comment section below, letting us know if you like. And you can find us on all the social medias that are named in the description box below. Plus, Board Game Geek. We do have geek lists there. You can talk to us there. You can find Draw for Initiative and Gamers Couch both there. Also, both of us are there. We talk, we type, all of that.
When we're not here. Because we cannot be at 2 places at the same time, as we established, and we have to kind of adhere to our own rules.
Yeah, we have to really speed up that process of...
Intro.
No.
Outro.
of development, because soon we will be at another convention and we kind of have the same problem there. So please make the anachrony happen without the bad things of the anachrony. So, outro. Like, share, describe, and subscribe.
Like, share, and describe what we're doing to other people so that they don't have to watch it.
Yeah, right. Save them. Save them.
The more
subscribe.
The more important part. Get your ass to Mars.
Yes, that too. And put some Snickers in your knickers. No. I don't know. No, don't. So we're going to see you in 2 weeks back with lots of new games. And I hope you enjoy and take good care. Have fun. You can see sneak peeks of upcoming games on Instagram and Facebook and Twitter, most likely. So watch out if you're curious. And we're going to sign off now saying goodbye. Say it. Say the goodbye.
Goodbye.
Wonderful. You always need a bit longer. Bye.